Hi everyone, today I'm going to give a critical presentation on a literature called The Handmaid's Tale and how it's been turned into various forms of media. Here's the table of contents, which will cover information about The Handmaid's Tale, synopsis, author biography, TV series versus novel, characters, explanation, color symbolisms, and real events. Basically, The Handmaid's Tale is a dystopian fiction novel and TV series. The story is about the country, America, being governed by a religious dictatorship. The setting of the story is in a futuristic dystopian United States, where Offred, which is the main character, is forced to become a handmaid, a sexual slave that serves as a surrogate for couples who desire children but who are unable to have them themselves. She works for the heartless Serena Joy and her evil husband, the commander. Offred is in love with the commander's driver, named Nick, and must find a way to make babies before she is shipped off to the wastelands. The author of this novel is Margaret Atwood. She is a Canadian poet, novelist, literary critic, essayist, teacher, environmental activist, and an inventor. Her TV series is also based on a communist society like China as the setting when she wrote the book. Her inspiration came from when she traveled to Berlin in the 1980s and was motivated by the Cold War. Here is the timeline. In 1985, the book was published. Following that, in 1990, it was made into a film with a screenplay by Harold Pinter. 10 years later, in 2000, Paul Reuters composed an opera that premiered in Copenhagen based on the book. And in 2013, a ballet was performed by the Royal Pennepipe Ballet. In 2017, the Handmaid's Tale novel was available in a form of television series on Hulu website. And in 2019, Atwood's sequel to The Handmaid's Tale was released. A comparison between TV series and the novel. The similarities that they share include the class in the society. The highest class is the commander, in which he wears black outfit. The commander's wife wears the blue outfit. The handmaid, which is the lowest class, wears the red outfit. And in the TV series, Serena Joy looks so young. An Offred name is revealed, which is June, and there are more LGBTQ characters present in the TV series, like Maura and Luke. And everyone has a smartphone. We can also see other points of view, rather than just the narrator's point of view. While in the novel, there's no reveal of Offred's name, and Offred is a passive character. Offred also wants to survive rather than rebel. For example, she was asked by Ofglen to be a spy for her, but then she rejected because she thinks that it's very dangerous for her. And what do these two share in common is that men are more powerful than women, and the government oppressed the citizens. The commander has many wives, and Offred wants to survive. The salvaging and executions are the penalty for biblical sins like adultery, but Offred knows that others were executed for resisting the government. What happens to handmaids after giving birth? Soon after birth, the baby must be given over to the handmaid's commander and his wife. After this, the handmaid will become the property of a new commander. Some of the main characters from The Handmaid's Tale. First, the commander. He is the highest ranking official in Gilead. The commander's wife is a former televangelist. Her career has been taken away by the government. Offred is a handmaid and the protagonist and narrator of The Handmaid's Tale, one of the few fertile women remaining in Gilead. Ofglen is Offred's shopping partner. Nick is the commander's driver, and Mora is a headstrong liberal and lesbian, and used to be Offred's best friend in college. The meaning behind color. Red color symbolizes fertility. Red suggests the blood of the menstrual cycle and of childbirth. Red is also considered to be a scandalous color. The places frequented by prostitutes are called red light districts. I think that the handmaids wear red because people view handmaids like prostitutes or concubines. Also, it is a representation of violence and death, like the blood on the executed criminals. For the color blue, it was worn by the commander's wife, which is a representation of the lawful and upper-class wives. Blue is often associated with purity and serenity. The color is considered a very feminine color. For the commander, black color represents elegance and high status. Sometimes it might represent the evilness of the commander. Lastly, the green color symbolizes poverty and low status, in which Mother wears it. The handmaids wear wings in order to cover their heads and shield them from the world. The colonies are areas of North America that have been contaminated by pollution and radioactive waste. Gilead used this system to send women who convict of various crimes known as unwomen to the colonies to punish them. The colonies are known to have horrific living conditions, with prisoners or unwomen sent there being used as slave labor. And those sent there to the colonies often die quickly from sickness brought on by the pollution and poor living conditions, and from malnutrition and overexertion. Most died after 3 years. The Republic of Gilead is a theocratic dictatorship, with those who obtain power being on the top. For the handmaid, who came to live with the commander, has to use the commander's last name, and everyone who is a handmaid has a name that starts with the word "of" and follow with the last name of the commander, such as Fred, and these two words would combine together to be the name of that handmaid. For example, Offred and Offglen. According to Britannia.com, the term theocracy means a government by divine guidance or by officials who are regarded as divinely guided. In many theocracies, government leaders are members of the clergy, and the state's legal system is based on religious law. Theocratic rule was typical of early civilizations. Comparing to the real events. This novel reminds me of the Chinese Cultural Revolution during Mao Zedong's era. There were many philosophers' books such as Confucius' books being burned because the books were about governing the country in Chinese traditional ritual. During the Cultural Revolution 1966, the leader of the Communist Party, Mao Zedong, thought that the country should get rid of traditional ritual, belief, idea, and thought in order to move forward China. As in many totalitarian societies, females in Gilead are forbidden from reading and writing. The punishment for a first offense is having one's hand cut off, which enables the authorities to more easily maintain control over them. I think Chinese Communist Party is similar to the Republic of Gilead because the ruler of the country controlled their citizens' freedom. For the Chinese Communist Party, the government controlled news. Chinese people who live in the mainland of China cannot use social media applications such as Facebook, Line, Twitter, and Google, because the government is afraid that if the citizens know about the outside world too much, they will have a bad effect on the Communist Party. Instead, China has their own search engine and applications such as Baidu, Zhihu, and WeChat. The reason that Chinese leaders let people use the country's own search engine is because the government can check up about the topic that their citizens are up to. Chinese citizens cannot mention Chinese Communist Party in a bad way. I think that there are many countries in the world that the citizens seek for freedom. Let me mention about the historical event of China in 1989. At that year, many Chinese young citizens went to Tiananmen Square and protested the Chinese Communist Party leader Deng Xiaoping. Hu Yaobang used to be the CCP secretary but got kicked out because he supported and listened to the citizens' word. However, at that time, many Chinese citizens went to Tiananmen Square to ask for fairness to Hu Yaobang and also ask for freedom to elect the country's leader. Even after the economic reform, there were many problems that occurred in China, such as the corruption inside the Communist Party, high rate of unemployment, and gap between rich and poor people. Deng Xiaoping and his party think that this will affect their power, so they decided to use military weapons and killed the citizens who came to protest in Tiananmen Square. Of course, many citizens died from this incident.
Here's an answer to why was this novel be bestseller in 2017.
In 2017, The Handmaid's Tale book was on the top bestsellers book because the details of the book satirized the society. At that time, the President Donald Trump made a law that terminating the pregnancy is a difficult task to wish for. Many American women disagreed with Donald Trump's action. They wore the red handmaid's outfit to show that America this time is like a dystopian world in which women are being oppressed by men and born to produce babies. When the Khmer Rouge took power in 1975, they completely evacuated the cities and abolished religious practice, private property, money, and the judicial system. Families were divided up by age and gender and were sent to labor camps, where they had to work from dawn to dusk to meet the production quotas. At least 1.7 million people, or a quarter of the population, are estimated to have died from hunger, disease, or execution in political purges. Hundreds of men and women who had never seen each other before were forced to marry and spend the night together to consummate their marriage. Forced marriages were designed to play a crucial role in the production of children, who would become vital additions to the regime's workforce and revolutionary ranks. Where individuals whose marriages were arranged by Angkar did not generally enjoy a normal married life, because couples were separated into different work camps a few days after the wedding ceremony. However, they will receive a regular visitations from the husband and wife organized to ensure that they would still procreate. It has been shown that these couples were regularly instructed to meet again, usually during the time when women were believed to be fertile. This further supports the argument for the reproductive purpose of these marriages. From 1970 to 1975, there was roughly 1.3 million people died from starvation, lack of medicine and medical services, exhaustion from overworked, and execution. Therefore, the Communist Party Khmer required an increased birth rate to support the Agrarian Revolution. With that, there is a propaganda magazine called The Revolutionary Flag that required increase in the population and explained in terms of meeting the needs of Cambodia's agricultural production. Confucianism is the answer to why inequalities still exist. Confucius is a philosopher of spring and autumn that teaches Chinese people life lessons. These are the Confucius teachings. First, all men are better than women. Second, women must stay only in their house. Third, girls must listen to their father. When they grow up, they must listen to their husband. And when they are old, they must listen to their son. Fourth, women were born to be men's property and nursed men.
Let's talk about the influence of Confucianism in Thailand. I think that it is similar to Chinese culture, in which women who already get married have to use their husband's last name to show that the woman belongs to the men. It is kind of like the way to show respect to the men's family. Moreover, I think that the Chinese culture also spread to many other countries such as Japan, Korea, Thailand, usually countries in Asia. For our country, Thailand, I think that there is inequality between men and women too. The reason might be because Thai population is considered ethnic Chinese. In the past, when Thai people married Thai men, they had to use the husband's last name, usually Chinese Thai people. Moreover, I think that Thai law, especially in the past, makes the man have more power than the woman. For example, the man can use the gender prefix Mr. before marry and after marry, but the woman has to change the gender prefix after getting married, change from Miss to Mrs. I think the reason for changing gender prefixes for women is to specify unmarried women and married women. But for men, the gender prefix for men have not changed because in the past, Thai people believe that men who have a lot of wives are powerful and rich. It shows that the family has a good status in society. How do women nowadays try to fight back?
Tarana Burke is an American activist who started the Me Too movement. In 2006, she began using #MeToo to help other women with similar experiences to stand up for themselves. TheDictionary.com defined #MeToo as a social movement originating among women, advocating for survivors of sexual harassment or violence to speak out about their experiences in order to expose and combat various forms of sexual misconduct. During World War II, the Nazi regime kidnapped thousands of children regarded as Aryan-looking to raise them as children of the Third Reich. With blonde-haired and blue-eyed children, they were transported to Germany to be Germanized. Around 400,000 children were abducted throughout Europe. The country that suffered the most was Poland, with approximately 200,000 children were forced to separate from their family. The purpose of Lebensborn Society was to offer the young girls who were deemed racially pure the possibility to give birth to a child in secret. The child was then given to the SS organization, which took charge in the child's education and adoption. Both mother and father needed to pass a racial purity test. Blonde hair and blue eyes were preferred. Of all the women who applied, only 40% passed the racial purity test and were granted admission to the Lebensborn program. The majority of mothers were unmarried. And in 1939, 58% were unmarried, and about 70% by 1940. Aunt Lydia is a representation of SS nurse during Nazi Germany. They forced children to forget their parents and persuade children that they were abandoned. The kidnappings were organized by the SS in order to take children by force who matched the Nazi racial criteria. Taliban is an extreme Islamic fundamentalist group which became particularly powerful in Afghanistan about 10 years after the publication of The Handmaid's Tale. Their views include a refusal to allow girls to be educated, an insistence on women being fully covered, including the face, by a head-to-toe veil, the imposition of brutal sentences such as amputation and public stoning to death for what are perceived as breaches of Sharia law. Afred, the main character, after she was taken by the authorities and told that she would become a handmaid, she was fitted with a tracking device. However, after that, she decided to cut it off because she believed that cutting it off would be able to free herself from the state's control, and this also should help her to escape from the city undetected. The Rachel and Leah Center is unofficially known as the Red Center, is a center established to house and train handmaids. It is named after the biblical Rachel and Leah, whose story provided inspiration for the role of handmaids as breeders in the Republic of Gilead. The Red Center is so nicknamed both due to the fact its primary inhabitants are handmaids and who are required to wear red. The center is run by the ants. The concept of handmaids came from the biblical story of Rachel and her husband Jacob in the biblical book of Genesis. In the story, Rachel was unable to conceive children, so she suggested that Jacob impregnate Rachel's handmaid Bilhah and thus get children that way. Here's a passage from the Genesis book. "Give me children, or I shall die." Jacob's anger was kindled against Rachel, and he said, "Am I in the place of God, who has withheld from you the fruit of the womb?" Then she said, "Here is my maid Bilhah. Go into her, that she may bear upon my knees, and even I may have children through her." Who are the sons of Jacob? They are a political group called the Sons of Jacob, has overthrown the U.S. government and created a new country called the Republic of Gilead. The hierarchy in Gilead. In Gilead, women can be divided into 6 groups, which are handmaids, wives, mothers, aunts, Elkanah wives, and aunt women. The wives are usually married to high-ranking men in Gilead, such as the commanders, angels, and eyes. Being a wife is regarded as a high honor. Only women perceived as being pure and moral are given the privilege of marrying. For example, handmaids could never be wives due to their controversial nature. Punishments like amputation are still inflicted under Sharia law or Islamic law in Sudan and in Saudi Arabia, where currently women are not supposed to drive cars or to travel without being escorted by a male relative. Atwood's feminism makes her particularly hostile to such attitudes, which she observed at first hand in Afghanistan during the World Tour in 1978. Birth dearth is a neologism referring to falling fertility rates. In the late 1980s, the term was used in both American and European societies, which has been expanded later into other industrialized nations. One of the prominent factors that led to the infertility of women in the Gilead Society is pollution. Nazi authority named Heinrich Himmler first created the Lebensborn program to increase Germany's population. Pregnant German women deemed racially vulnerable were encouraged to give birth to their children at Lebensborn homes. During World War II, the program became complicit in the kidnapping of foreign children with physical features considered Aryan by the Nazi. Thousands of children were transferred to Lebensborn centers in order to be Germanized. Up to 100,000 children may have been stolen from Poland alone. In these centers, everything was done to force the children to reject and forget their birth parents. As an example, the SS nurses tried to persuade the children that they were deliberately abandoned by their parents. The children who refused the Nazi education were often beaten. Most of them were finally transferred to concentration camps, most of the time to Kalisz in Poland, and exterminated. The others were adopted by an SS family. A quote from Lila York, who is a choreographer for the Royal Pennypeg Ballet. In quote, "The threat to women's freedom right at this moment is quite real." Thank you for listening to my presentation.